Last night, the U.S. men's national team got absolutely thrashed 4-0 by Switzerland in Nashville. This was the last tune-up game before the Gold Cup that happens later on in the summer at the same time as the Club World Cup happens. And it seems like a lot of people are pretty surprised by it, but I'll be honest, I'm not. First of all, this isn't the Team USA strongest team. No Christian Pulisic, no Tyler Adams, no Timothy Weah, no Weston McKennie. Serginho Dest isn't even going to get called up for the Gold Cup. And a couple guys who play for the Sounders or the Inter Miami aren't going to play either. So this isn't like the U.S. went balls to the walls, all in, trying to win this one tune-up friendly game before the big Club World Cup. So you can't fault them too much. But it seems like a lot of people are making a huge deal about it because, look, if your team loses, your national team, it doesn't matter which squad you put up. People are still going to look at that and be like, y'all lost handily to a small country, a tiny country that isn't considered a football powerhouse like many other small countries, like a Portugal that we just saw, for instance. And that squad didn't even look like they had a chance of beating you on your home soil, and they didn't just beat you, they destroyed you. The through balls that they put in, the goals that they scored, how easy and effortless it made them look to get past your defense against Zimmerman and Matt Turner, etc. This is not a good look for the U.S. national team. And I made this analogy. The U.S. men's national team, in terms of media attention, hype, publicity, think of Manchester United, but take away all of the success from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. That's the U.S. men's national team. They get so much of a spotlight, so much attention, so much galore. Why? Because it's America. It's a country of over 330 million people, and it is a country with huge social influence, the most social influence ever. That's why everybody hates America, except for people who live in America who love it, but even people who live in America may hate it. So it's very rough for a lot of people from the outside to say, why do we care about the U.S. team? They don't care about football. They care about it so little that they call it soccer, and they have another sport that you use your hands with, and they call it football. And even with that, the U.S. team gets such preferential treatment. I know this isn't just about the U.S. national team while this is happening, that they're going to host the World Cup, and they're going to host the Club World Cup. And they hosted the World Cup in '94. And from the way that FIFA is doing this stupid World Cup hosting thing, where next year, in 2030, 6 countries are going to host the World Cup, at least one game. Spain, Morocco, Portugal, and then 3 in South America. 2034, you have Asia. 2038, with FIFA's rule that if you host a World Cup, that continent can't host it for the next 2 editions. It's probably looking like it'll be North America again. So why are they getting such preferential treatment? It could obviously be because FIFA is super money hungry, and anything that will draw the money will be that way. But for a country that big, with that many people, when you get a player like Christian Pulisic, who at times played like a world-class player, and you get a decent player, not a great player, but a decent player, if we're talking about the upper echelon of European footballers like Weston McKennie and Timothy Weah, who is the son of the greatest Liberian football player ever and also Liberia's president. You know, you got decent goalkeeper, you got guys who have played for big clubs like a Giovanni Reina, who I forgot to mention, like a Serginho Dest. You're going to get a little bit more adulation because, look, what American fans are starting to realize is some of them are starting to pick up that soccer culture, the football culture that exists. You actually get more avid fans for an MLS match these days than you do for an NBA game, unless it's like the Thunder or something like that. They're starting to pick it up, and they want their national team to be good. That's why it means so much that the U.S. has a stranglehold on a country like Mexico and consistently beats a country like Mexico or Canada or Panama. And they've essentially established themselves as the best team in North America, which it should be given how many people it has and the resources it has. But it means a little bit more to them. It means a lot when in 2014, Tim Howard saved 16 shots in a match that they barely lost to Belgium. It means a little bit more because they want the sport to grow, because it's the most popular sport that we have that is international, and we actually have international competitions and consistently. NFL, of course, that doesn't happen. The flag football that's going to happen in the Olympics doesn't matter. We do have hockey with like the 4 nations, for instance, and that was a big deal when we saw it happen at the All-Star, NHL's All-Star game. We have basketball, and that only really happens once every 4 years because players don't play every year for the USA team. They only really play at the Olympics and care. And that's a pretty big deal for us too. Baseball as well with the World Baseball Classic, that's a big deal as well. But soccer, football is the one sport where they feel a little bit larger sense of pride for America, because the other sports, the US is a much bigger favorite. They have a much greater chance, even if they don't win the Four Nations and they lose to Canada, or even when they lose in the final of the Baseball Classic to Japan, at least they're able to get that far. At least they're able to have a great competition because those sports are heavily popular in America. But for soccer, it feels like the playing field is a little bit more even, and Americans are hungry for the next great U.S. men's team, because the women's team is super dominant, because we know in a lot of other countries, sports are sexist, of course, so not a lot of women want to play in those sports or even have access to play in those sports. So when you have a country like the U.S., which encourages girls to play soccer because they're like, listen, you're not going to play American football, you're not going to play hockey, you're not going to play baseball, you're going to play softball, but it's different. And basketball is going to be so looked down upon that you wouldn't want to play it anyway. What does that leave? Soccer. And that's why the U.S. women's team has been so good, and they're always consistently favorites. But for other countries where the men's team, the men's soccer national football team is everything, they're going to thrash the U.S. And what's worse about the U.S. is that it's getting worse. Remember, in Qatar, they drew with England. That was a big deal for them to just draw with England. You know, a team with monumental stars all over the place. Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden. Cole Palmer wasn't there at the time. Kyle Walker, Jordan Pickford in goal. Huge stars all over the place. Huge Premier League, big-time players everywhere. And the U.S. actually drew with them, and they actually won the round of 16 match and made it to the quarterfinals. That was a big deal. That was a really big deal for the U.S. They won 3 Nations Leagues in a row, but then they got embarrassed, really, you'd have to say, in the Copa America last year in America, losing to Panama after a controversial red card, losing the Nations League last year, losing the Gold Cup. They haven't really treated the Gold Cup as much of a priority because of the Nations League and now being invited to these Copa Americas. But it's getting worse for the USA team. And everyone's saying that the USA team has become really annoying. Just annoying in the way that they carry themselves, some of the commercials that you see, or if you watch soccer in America. One of the first things I remember seeing after Portugal won the Nations League is all the commentators on Fox were talking about USA's national team. And I was kind of like, who cares? This is about Portugal. But because we're in America, they have to talk about the U.S. team and the Gold Cup and what they have to show and what they have to prove. And Lena Donovan, what's your take on the U.S. men's team? Who gives a shit? They don't have a chance to compete in next year's World Cup, even though it's in America. But the attention is so great and it's so high for a club that hasn't won anything. That's why I compare it to Manchester United without the trophies. Even when they are 16th in the league, they get a ton of attention and a ton of guys who are saying, hey, I want to play for you guys. I'm Timothy Weah. I am the son of the greatest Liberian ever, but I was born in Brooklyn, so I'm going to go play for Team USA. I'm not faulting him for that at all, but I'm just saying that's the reputation that is still there. But Team USA, they seem lost, all out of answers, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that I'd still say they're the favorite to win the Gold Cup, but is it a surefire guarantee that they'll win? Absolutely not. Even with all their guys playing, absolutely not. No way a guarantee. And they have become the most obnoxious team in world football, by far. And maybe they can wreck the ship and turn the side, because everybody's down on them right now because their performances have been pretty bad. Switzerland killed them in like 15 minutes. They just needed to wait for all the goals to come just before halftime. And that match was over. It was absolutely over in a heartbeat. And you just thought, do they not really care? Is it because they don't have their best players? Or is it because they're just not good enough? And now they're being exposed as just not good enough, and that run of luck is over. We saw the same thing happen to Belgium, where now they're struggling to beat a team like Wales. For Team USA, just focus on football, focus on soccer, keep your mind there. Don't worry about being, a mega star and, wondering how I can be the American guy in a major European club. Christian Pulisic is oftentimes called the LeBron James of soccer. Don't worry about that and just worry about being the best player on Milan and the U.S. national team, which I hope he's going to do. Same thing with McKinney and the rest of the guys. And maybe things will turn around and be better for them. I'm not exactly a Team USA, addict, just because I, don't really care that much about that team particularly, even though I love the sport. But I don't want them to be as unable to be successful as they are right now and get destroyed by teams like Switzerland. This isn't England, this isn't Brazil, this isn't Spain, this isn't Portugal, it's Switzerland. And they need to do some serious soul searching because that was bad. Oh, that was bad.